right, well, let's fade that out. Hello, you good people. Happy Sunday. Thank you for joining us, friends, lovers. We are so glad you are here. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir and Amy Nasir, and we are glad you came because it's time to dance. In fact, that opening music there, we changed it up a little bit. An old song by Trevor, my old band, whose name I don't even remember how to pronounce. Dance, Dance, Dance. What?
Oh, was that what that was?
What else would you call a song in 7/4/54? But, you know.
You know, in the later iteration of Trevor, I was the drummer.
Amy was the drummer.
Yes.
But when we put that song together as kids do, we, there we go, just bringing up the super chat. You know, kids are silly and cocky and even a little, not cynical, just kids, you know. So, of course, we had to write a dance song that nobody could possibly dance to. And the funny thing was, we would play it and people would dance anyway, and that fits our theme for today, which is indeed Dance, Dance, Dance. Today is Sunday, June 12th, 2022. The 163rd day of this, your best year yet. You've only got 8 days till summer. I hope you're already doing some summer magic, getting on your summer groove, because at least here in Michigan, Motown, it's beautiful out there, and we have been taking advantage. Yesterday we went to an art show, except
with art.
Except we weren't seeing the art. We were the art. Well, I wasn't the art. Amy was the art. We'll talk about that.
The art.
She was the art. She even you brought.
You had my fan.
You brought show and tell. You brought props.
Yep.
I love that. For folks, catching the podcast version of this, check out the video. Amy has props.
I do.
Oh, very cool.
Props, man.
Yes. Today is June 12th, and on this day in history, this was kind of fun. June 12th was the day President Reagan challenges Gorbachev to tear down this wall.
And so they did.
And so they did.
That's kind of cool.
You know, for all of my criticisms of Ronald Reagan, and, you know, it's politics, so naturally I have plenty of criticisms. His time with the PMRC, which will relate to what we talk about today, supporting the Tipper Gore of all people, and the other folks, the Christian Coalition, who were saying, this rock and roll music is destroying the world. Well, you think that was anachronistic, like nobody really thought that way, and we're exaggerating, but this week we went to see a rock concert.
We did, actually.
And some of you won't remember when rock concerts were controversial. We went to see a rock concert by the band Styx. Mm-hmm. And we saw REO Speedwagon and Loverboy of all things. But
Loverboy.
Styx in particular was
loose.
Yes. A magnificent concert for those of you who like rock music or even borderline progressive music.
Yeah. Heard it from a friend who... Okay. That's REO Speedwagon.
That's REO Speedwagon did some great songs before their schmaltz days.
I'm here to give out the earworms for all of you in the audience.
I'm sure everybody is appreciating you getting those particular songs stuck in their head. But the band Styx, this is fun. The band Styx, if you know anything about their history and some of the quirky music they did their last album with their original lead singer, Kilroy, was here. It was a science fiction / dystopian album about an era right around the corner, not too far from now, when rock music had been outlawed. And you think, rock music outlawed, isn't that kind of dumb? Maybe, shades of 2112 and rediscovering an electric guitar. Isn't that goofy kid stuff? But it wasn't that long after that album, Kilroy Was Here, came out, that Tipper Gore started the PMRC, the Parents Music Resource Council, to put labels on record albums and to stop certain record albums from being sold and to get certain songs no longer played on the radio. It wasn't that long
Every
ago.
time I think of Tipper Gore, I think of her poor husband, and then I think of Man Bear Pig, which is a reference to South Park. But anyway, that's where she is now. I think she's on an island with Man Bear Pig, having a happy life.
I'm sure some of you out there know what that means. I'm not one of them, but
Robert doesn't know.
I have no idea. But yes, on this date, 1987, Ronald Reagan, in one of his great acts, tells Mikhail Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And it was just over 2 years later that, sure enough, the wall between East and West Berlin came down, back when there still was an East Berlin and West Berlin. It's interesting that nobody ever tried to escape West Berlin to go to East Berlin, but people got shot trying to escape East Berlin to go to West Berlin. We could talk more about that another time, but it's a great day in history to have made that speech and to have followed up on it on political action that I know some people will say it had nothing to do with Reagan. Russia was falling apart anyway. It was going to all happen anyway. Some of that is true and some of it is not. A strong word has enormous value. Also on to this date, we celebrate the birth date of Anne Frank, famously of The Diary of Anne Frank. Actually, the book was originally called The Diary of a Young Girl. It was released after her life and by one of her only surviving relative who had access to the manuscript.
It's amazing that that survived.
Yes, yes. And not only is it her birthday today, she was born in 1927, but it was on this date, on her birthday, at the age of 12, that she was gifted a diary. And she spent the next 2.5 years writing in it. A tragic but enormously inspiring story. It's also Jordan Peterson's birthday.
Does he celebrate?
He does.
He does?
Of course he does.
Is his cake made of lint and ash?
You know, that kind of comment only makes sense to those who have analyzed Jordan Peterson's metaphysics and have determined that he has a malevolent sense of life. But
yes.
Not everybody looks at Jordan Peterson that way.
Does he flog himself with the number of years that he's old? Sorry. All right. I'm bringing more of the laughter and the humor to this show that it sorely needs, right? Right.
Well, everybody knows, because we talked about it this week, the last show we did. All right, we have to talk about this real quick.
Okay.
The last show we did last Sunday, the last episode of 5 Minutes, heavy duty. You know, these Sunday
Heavy
shows
duty.
are largely light and fluffy and hopefully charming and fun, but last Sunday I had to talk about the new imperialists, the way in which people know better than you do what to do with your life. They are telling you what to do with your life, telling you what to do with your time, telling you what to do with your energy, telling you what to do with your money, telling you what to do in every way. And this runs the gamut from the left to the right. Very political show. Unusually political show. Like I say, Sundays are usually fuzzier than that. We usually save that stuff for the midweek. But we got a comment on the internet.
Yeah, and it was on the Leonard Peikoff appreciation page, which is a pretty serious, page and everything. But I do post our Sunday shows to it. You know, it's a Sunday show. It's fun. It's lighthearted, and somebody took issue with the fact that we were being jokesters.
We were called jokesters. We were called a blemish on objectivism.
Yes.
Now, for those Sunday fans who are not already Ayn Rand fans, what they're saying is that we are a dark mark against the philosophy of objectivism, and he was discounting us. He was writing us off.
Yeah.
And I forget exactly what he went into it, because Amy answered him and he kept coming back. Boom.
No, I mean, he did come back, but more of a troll-like way. He never actually answered the question, what exactly did anybody say that you're taking offense at? He never gave us that information.
It seemed like the implication was that we just weren't serious enough.
Yeah.
We're jokesters. So I think there is room for humor in
absolutely
in what we do. In fact, I think that's important.
And the thing is that, Alex, Equal to Reality, he made a good point that, it depends on what you're laughing at or what your humor is targeting.
Yes.
Or what your personality is targeting. If you're sneering at things and being sarcastic and cynical, that is not us. Or if anybody sees that in us, please let us know, because that is not supposed to be there. I do make snide remarks against things that should be made fun of.
Well, if you want to pick on Jordan Bernt Peterson, who turns 60 today, you go ahead and do that. But I'm going to.
Well, happy birthday.
I toast the man.
Happy birthday, Jordan
Peterson. A toast
Peterson.
to Jordan Peterson.
Yes, and may you live life in a happy way.
Now, if you're one of those cynics, one of those mean people who picks on Jordan Peterson, like somebody I know, you might not want to buy his book. Well, he's done several books, but his 12 Rules for Life. And then he did the newer one, Beyond Order, which is another 12 Rules for Life. Fortunately, those 12 Rules for Life are reprinted in toto on Wikipedia. And the second 12 rules as well. Some of them are surprisingly good. And that'll be one of the themes for today, too, because we need to talk about things that are surprisingly good without getting too much into philosophy. Now, how can that be? Well, I put the link in the show notes that you'll see right after the show, but you could go to Wikipedia and just look up 12 Rules for Life, and you get all of that creamy goodness without even paying for it. I recommend buying the book, though. It's pretty good. Like anything that's non-objectivist, you have to read selectively. So happy birthday, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
It's also sad birth dates. One is Brad Delp. Bradley Edward Delp, lead singer of Boston, was born on this date, so happy birthday to the memory of Brad Delp, no longer with us. If you are a guitar person, and I'm seeing in the chat, we've got guitar players, not just people because I happen to know they're guitar players, but people with guitar player in their screen names are coming up. So maybe the fact that we are musicians is bringing in the guitar players. Yeah. If you're not already watching the Rick Beato videos, that comes out funny. If you're not already watching Rick Beato, and his name is spelled Beat-O, it's kind of weird. I pronounced it Beato for the longest time, but no, it's Rick Beato. If you watch enough of his videos, you hear him say his own name.
Okay.
He explains things in music. And he does a series, for example, The Greatest Songs Ever, and then analyzes why they're great. And what's fun is, by whatever means, and he is a music professional, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised, he gets his hands on all of the actual files that are used to reproduce or remaster this music. So he'll analyze a song, and he'll be able to play you the studio track of just the vocalist or just the bass player, and he'll do that when he explains what makes a song great. If you look in the show notes, or look them up on YouTube, you'll see Rick Beato talking about two different Boston songs, or two different episodes on Boston. One was a whole episode on More Than a Feeling. Another one is on a couple of different songs where he just tries to decide what's their greatest song. And again, the great thing is he isolates Brad Delp. Happy birthday, Brad Delp. He isolates Brad Delp's vocals. And you don't realize, because the songs are so well done, how good the vocals are. You're like, yeah, it's really good singing, but everything in the song is good. And when he isolates them, it's inspiring. You get a lump in your throat on just how good a singer this guy was. And one more, speaking of late musicians.
So wait, he was the lead singer.
Brad Delp was the lead singer of Boston.
Okay, well, I mean, he could hit the high notes
He could.
More than a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And he gets that real high note.
Yeah. He would sing straight up to an E above C.
Yeah, and that's not falsetto.
And he would go falsetto, and he would hit notes that I also can't hit falsetto. So he could take that range and generally go an octave higher falsetto too.
Wow.
But no, he could sing them straight well above C, which I scream an A to get it out. So that's a whole fifth above anything that I can even think about. And he does another thing that I don't do, which is he sounds good while doing it. So happy birthday to the late Brad Delp. Again, worth revisiting, especially if you haven't seen Rick Beato's videos on music in general and Boston in particular. The last one would be happy birthday to the late Pete Farndon. If you are a fan of the Pretenders, you know him as founding bass player. And
he was the bass player for, sadly, that Rush Limbaugh used.
That's true. He was the bass player on the Rush Limbaugh theme song.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, well, that was a funny story, too, because Limbaugh played around with different music, eventually settled on My City Was Gone by the Pretenders. I don't know if Farndon played on that one, if he was still alive at that point. He died young. But he was the co-writer on songs like The Wait and Space Invaders on that first Pretenders album. It's funny, too, because Limbaugh, or the company, had received a cease and desist order, and they stopped using the song. And it was weird because I remember I was listening to Limbaugh at the time, and he started using other intro music. And you're like, oh, well, these are kind of good. He had different bumper music for commercials. So he had a wide library, but it just didn't sound the same opening the show. And it was funny because it wasn't that long after. It was only a month or two he was doing this. He got a letter from Chrissie Hynde, lead singer of the Pretenders and lead composer and songwriter for the song My City Was Gone. And she said, I did not send that, and I don't have any problem with you using the theme on your show. I don't listen to your show, but I don't have any problem with it. Now, you can only imagine, given that whatever you think of Limbaugh, he had more reach than any other broadcaster ever, with over 600 radio stations, what the royalties must have been on that 30 to 45 seconds of that song being played.
So it was Tony Butler who played the bass on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So it was not the original Pete Farndon.
Okay.
But Pete was the first album. And the great first album, the edgy first album.
Yeah.
We've talked about the song Tattooed Love Boys, for example. Chrissie Hynde. I mean, she was so punk rock at the beginning.
It's really
And she
wild
always
stuff.
had an edge. She never lost her edge, even when she went a little bit pop. And finally, it is Loving Day. So happy Loving Day. Now, some of you already know what National Loving Day is, this day, June 12th. This is the day that the Supreme Court of the United States outlawed miscegenation laws. And some people don't even know what the hell is miscegenation and why were there still 16 states that had laws against it. It's hard to imagine now, but there was a time when, in America, they banned interracial marriage.
Yeah.
And the couple, Mildred and Richard, pursued legal action. They had actually been married in a state where it was legal, in Washington. And they wanted to move to places where it was illegal, and they took it to the court. They went up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court ruled on it on this date, June 12th, 1967. 1967. It's just not that long ago.
No, it was not.
That interracial marriage was illegal. So, and it's just a charming coincidence that Richard's last name was Loving, Richard Loving. So, happy Loving Day.
Yes.
To anybody we know out there who has anything like, including people in my own family, mixed marriages, which we just don't care about anymore. But I remember when I was young, because I was born before 1967. I was a little kid when this ruling was made. But I remember when mixed marriages were scandalous.
Yeah.
And if somebody, guess who's coming to dinner kind of scenario, somebody brought their potential spouse home, and they were of a different race, it was cause for all sorts of concern and trouble, and sometimes parents would outright refuse or try to, because that was a time when people were a little less independent in that regard.
Yeah, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is a great movie.
You must see Guess Who's Coming Home to Dinner.
Great movie.
Yeah, we watched that during our Sidney Poitier phase.
Yes. When after he passed away, we were honoring him with viewings of his movies. So, good stuff.
Great film. And that's the last of my June 12th celebrations. but the reason why my theme ties together these ideas of independence and celebration and kind of getting over the kind of weirdness of the previous week. In the category what we're listening to. On Thursday, we did a show called Me, Myself, and Sam Harris.
Which is a great title.
And it was reviewing Sam Harris's recent episode on The Self is an Illusion.
Yes.
And also his essay on Free Will is an Illusion.
Yeah. And love, free will. And
free will and the reality of love. And his idea that you can love people without free will, because It's not their choices that make you love them. They're simply people that make you happy and you're comfortable with, and you just happen to enjoy who they happen to be. But hatred, on the other hand, requires volition and choice, because we have to imagine somebody could have done better and they chose not to. Now,
and therefore you shouldn't hate anybody. Because,
it's a useless emotion, yeah.
I mean, it's like James Taggart's love letter to Cheryl Brooks. I mean, it's just disgusting. It's I'm sure it's something. I know it's intelligent sounding, but it's just so wrong on every level.
And the purpose of doing an episode on that wasn't to say the obvious things, which, the obvious things are Sam Harris thinks you should choose to deny volition, that you should choose to believe you have no choices. And likewise, Sam Harris has believed that you, whatever you means, have no self, which is you, but apparently not. And the reason to go through this episode, where he had a philosophy professor and expert in Eastern philosophy and Buddhism on his show and had the discussion, the reason to listen to that and to talk about it was to figure out what the hell does he mean, because he's not an idiot. And him and Jay Garfield, the professor, recognized that there are those contradictions, or apparent contradictions. So they explained what they really, really, really meant by that. So, for example, when they say you have no self, what they mean is not the obvious thing, which is stupid, but the idea that a lot of us have a self in the sense that we imagine ourselves separate from our body and even separate from our mind, like Amy had the perfect analogy, like we're transformers, we're those big robots. Yeah, but the real us is a little guy sitting in the chair driving the thing.
Yeah. It's a little man in my head, with a little steering wheel. Or like Gundam Wing, if anybody knows that. But, it's... what was the word?
Sam Harris.
Homunculus?
Sam Harris even used the concept of the homunculus, which was, early kind of crazy theories about biology and philosophy, that there's an analogous little man living inside of you, driving your body and driving your mind and driving your life.
And what it really came down to, as far as we could tell, is that I guess both Sam and Jay,
I like that, because Sam and Jay sounds like a comedy duo.
Yes, Sam and Jay.
Or a couple of goofy morning DJs.
Right.
It's time for Sam and Jay. We're going to get you to work freely.
Sam and Jay.
We're
in
gonna,
the mornings.
That's right. We'll deny free will right after the traffic.
And so it just seemed like they both had this sense of alienation. They both had this psychological situation for them personally, that they were projecting on other people. And it was absolutely bizarre land. So there you go.
And again, they gave examples that made sense, because we know people who experience this kind of alienation, this kind of detachment, the kind of person who says, I hate my body, it doesn't do what I want, or I wish my metabolism was higher, it's so hard to lose weight, I hate my this, that, or I hate this thing about myself, as if this thing is there are so many ways in which we do, either metaphorically, and we know exactly what we're talking about, or a little more pathologically, detach ourselves from ourselves. I understand what they're driving at.
And there are exceptions to the rule of living. Like, for instance, if somebody has an issue with anxiety and panic attacks, you can... there's the technique of just trying to look at yourself in an aerial view when you're having a panic attack, so that you can kind of distance part of your mind or part of your focus from what you're feeling, so that you can calm yourself down. But that's not what they're talking about. I mean, it's absolutely bonkers.
And their way of avoiding that detachment, that alienation, is largely through Eastern philosophy. And the idea of meditation and meditative states, and reaching states of mind where you feel in the moment. There's not that sense of detachment. And here's where I'm going with this. Here's the point. Here's the payoff. And we talked about this on Thursday, and this is what I want to talk about now. Even Sam and Jay, morning DJs in that comedy philosophy team, even Sam and Jay gave examples of when we don't have that detachment, and they referred specifically to flow states, when you're in a state of flow, when you're in the middle of playing a sport, and you're not second-guessing yourself, you're hardly even thinking about what you're doing. You're just letting it happen. You're letting your knowledge come to the fore, and you do the thing that you know you should do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not detached. It's in the moment. And I thought, well, if Sam and Jay understand that, then they must understand that everybody who's ever had that experience is not making the quote-unquote mistake they think we should be making. Not considering the self to be detached. The self is me. The self is the person, because they accept the idea that we are persons, and then they make a whole social thing out of it. But Sam and Jay get it. They do know that we live at least part of our lives in the moment, fully connected and present and intentional and mindful. We are here. We are here now. We are experiencing this moment right now, right here.
And that, yeah, go ahead.
And if they get that much, then they should be able to say, there's a failure mode, a kind of error that we sometimes make of being overly detached when we should be more in the moment. And if they said that, I would say, Sam and Jay, you guys are funny morning DJs, and I agree with your point. If they could do that, they could actually help more people be more present. And when I say more present, I don't mean anything woo. I just mean be here now. Don't think about the other thing. Don't look at your phone. Don't even think about me in a detached way, but just experience this moment. Mm-hmm. Think firsthand right now. And the reason why I say, well, they treat it like an exception. You get in a flow state, and then you're doing the right thing. But we do this all the time because it's not just in sports or in the workplace when you're having that feeling of flow, you're really getting the job done. Think about when you listen to music. And those of you who are performers, when you play music. Now, I tend to be a little, what's the word?
Analytical?
Analytical.
Yes.
That's the right word.
Yeah.
I tend to be a little analytical when I play music. So when I sight read, I'm very slow because as I'm reading sheet music, the staves, I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm thinking about the relations to the notes, and here's what they're doing, and here's what the chords behind that are. Yes. But most people, and we experienced this when we got together recently at a party where there was a trio, and this was really cool, playing clarinet, flute, and oboe, and they're playing from sheet music. They're sight reading. Some of them are playing pieces the others had brought that they had never played before.
Right.
But they can do that. And I asked them about that. I said, when you sight read, do you think about what you're playing? Do you realize, the composer's doing this interesting thing here, where he's changing modes or changing keys or taking the melody to the fifth and then going to the seventh, but not the octave? And they said, no, we don't do any of that. When we are playing, we are just playing. And we're looking at the music, and our fingers are moving because we've practiced. When we see that note, we do that thing. And they've got some presence of mind to think, I need to turn the page soon. It's not that they're complete zombies to the music, but they're not thinking about it at all. But even those of you who just listen to music, say you're not a musician, but you've got some music, some piece of music, some song or some composition or something that you love. Think about, we did a whole episode on things that get you choked up. Is there any music out there that gets you choked up? Mm-hmm. For some people, it would be orchestral music. For some people, it would be something like Leanne Womack's "I Hope You Dance," which we will come back to. And it's not just music, because dance can put you in that moment, in that state of consciousness where you're simply there. It's a moment that is, in Aristotle's words, an end value, or I would say an end in itself.
Yes.
Those moments you have where you think, I could die after this, and this was a life well worth living.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Yes. So, so we have some questions.
Good.
And
because I'm ignoring the chat, and I've got to get on that because I love the chat.
So I just want to point to, Bonnie was the first one on YouTube who commented, and she's giving some love to Jonathan Hoenig, who sold her a copy of None Less Than Victory by John David Lewis, which is a great book.
The late John Lewis.
Yeah.
What a guy. I'm
Yep.
so glad that we saw him.
Yeah, we saw him. We met him, and that was really good.
Last time we drove out to Michigan State University, which some of you know is, it's a bit of a drive from Motown. But we got to see him speak, meet him in person. What a guy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was...
And given what was going on at the time, a real hero.
Yeah. He passed away from cancer, and that was just very difficult. But we're very happy to have known him. So Bonnie says, thanks to Jonathan for selling her that book. That's great.
Yeah, Jonathan is now, I guess, a retailer on Amazon. Of course, he's selling his book, Price is Primary.
Yes.
And that's really good to see.
The new textbook of Americanism.
Yes, which I could reach over and grab on the
which is right over
there.
The Politics of Ayn Rand compilation.
Yes.
And so fantastic. We've got...
Of course, you should already have copies of both of those books.
Yes. Oh! I missed Paul's in the chat. Hi there, Paul. I think I said hi to everybody else.
Well, we'll have to get that in.
I'm Scott thinks that I'm a fun spouse. Well, thank you very much. And let's see, Dance by Fall Out Boy is a good song. I have to look that up.
Yeah, I'm sure other people have written songs. We wrote Dance before they did. That's all I can say. It's not as good as what they did, but we did it first. So that is something right there. I say Jim Ashley is making reference to an old joke where he says, there are those who celebrate and those who celibate. The first group believes in the self. The second believes in the non-self. You know, the old joke, right? About I don't even remember how it goes. Something about a priest lives his whole life very, very, learns to renounce everything in the world, and he's now 60, 70, 80 years old, and he's got this look of despair on his face because he's rereading the biblical texts, and he turns to the other priest and says, oh my God, the word was celebrate. So, yes. We're with you there, Jim.
Yeah.
Do not celibate.
Okay, let's see if we can do a lightning round of Q&A with Stephen here, who always sends us interesting questions. Sometimes they don't quite relate to what we're talking about, but...
Yes, he always has a lot of questions. What do we got this time? Let's see if we can answer a few of them.
Let's see here. Does Anne Frank teach us how to suffer? As far as I understand, no.
Well, only in the sense of grace under pressure.
Yeah. Right.
Nobody should teach you to suffer in the sense that, you should suffer, it'll be good for you.
No.
That would be more Jordan Peterson. But,
yes.
But no, grace under pressure is an extremely important virtue.
Yes. He also asks, I know there's more here. Where are the questions? Oh my gosh.
Oh, here, I'll take a look at the same time here.
Regarding the Loving versus Virginia and the and that law that was repealed, it should have been legal under the full faith and credit clause. I'm not so sure how that relates, but I'm not familiar with that clause.
Yeah. He also says, in some cases, the idea of make your bed, something that Jordan Peterson says, and actually originally came from McCrory, what's his name, the guy who wrote the book on it, military man who always said, if you make your bed first thing in the morning, then you've got one thing going for you. And I actually like that rule. I like that idea. And I'm a bed maker. I do. If you walk into my house and go to the master bedroom, you should find that the bed is made unless it's early in the morning, because it's not just you make your bed as a matter of duty and it gets you on the right track, although it's a good thing to get you on the right track. Start off by accomplishing things, but also you've now got one area of your house that is in order right from the start of the day. You've got one thing on your to-do list that you've already checked out, so now that you've started accomplishing things, you can continue to accomplish things, and you've got one thing you can look forward to at the end of the day, which is when you're ready to go to bed. Your bed is already ready, made, waiting for you. There's a lot more to it than just yeah, military discipline puts you in the right state of mind. It does, and that's good, and that's all real cool. I have to look up the writer of that book. But I know Peterson's into the whole make your bed thing, too.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm good with it.
I am not a bed maker, just so you know.
Well, I promised you,
Don't do
I've been
that.
promising you for the last 2 years that I would continue to find the kernel of truth, the bit of
Yes.
wisdom, the bit of joy, the bit of value in well-loved woo. And that's why I have to mention, as I mentioned a moment ago, the Leanne Womack song, I Hope You Dance.
Yeah, before we get to that, we do actually have one more question from Stephen. And this time it's not on YouTube, it's on Facebook.
Yes.
And he says, what's the difference between us live streaming on Facebook and the one on YouTube? They're both the same.
They are exactly the same, except that we want you to go to the one on YouTube.
Yes, because
They're both there because whatever's more convenient, you do that.
Right. We like to have you guys go on YouTube so that increases the
We need the
view
YouTube numbers.
count rate up. And if you like it and you share it, that's going to be great. Of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. We're trying to spread Nasirisms all over the universe, and that's something that you can help us with.
Oh.
If we actually receive or have 1,000 subscribers, we can actually do super chats, for instance, and make this production bigger and better. As you can see, it's not a huge production, but we make it really good every time.
Now, the real truth is we're trying to make $1 million. And so we need you to be part of that. We need you to make sure you subscribe on the YouTube channel, share the YouTube version. So the reason we're on Facebook is to increase our reach. And we're not just on Facebook. We're on Apple Podcasts.
Yes,
we're
we
on
are.
Spotify Podcasts. We're on the Google Podcast.
You can listen
platform.
to us anywhere.
I keep finding
We're all
places
over.
where this show appears that I didn't even know it was.
Yeah.
Because we use a syndication host that sends it out. And I just told them, send it everywhere you can.
Yes.
At some point, I have thought about scaling that back. Pull everything back, stop with the Facebook, stop with the Apple, stop with all of that, so that everybody will be on YouTube, and that will help raise the numbers. But I realized that is not the way. No, I want it everywhere. I want everybody to hear who wants to hear the show by whatever means. In fact, when I listen to it after the fact, I always listen on Apple Podcasts. I listen on my iPhone. So the short answer to your question is, what's the difference? There is none. It's just there to expand our reach. And because we're tech savvy and we can make that happen. So there you go.
And woohoo to John on YouTube. Yes.
Any other questions or comments before I get to, I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean?
No, I think we're caught up.
Okay, well, I'm going to scroll back because there were some great comments on that we could easily spend an hour talking about. But I mentioned Amy danced yesterday.
Yeah.
She was part of a flamenco dance troupe of 4 ladies. And I got to play a role. I got to control the music because they needed music to dance to.
I can't do it right now.
That's okay. That's probably really... I can turn the mics down when...
Sorry about that.
But it's worth it.
Okay.
It's worth it to hear you play.
We got the,
so you have
the fan
castanets
again.
and you have fans. And there are,
like
fancy dresses and veils and all of the things you would want. Although this time around, the group leader, Michelle, was the only one who got to dance with the shawls.
Yeah.
She decided to do a solo for that one because there were 8 different pieces. So it was very, very cool.
It was a big program, and we got it done.
Now, this is a small and local troupe.
Yeah.
So 4 dancers. They've had as many as 6 or 7 dancers, depending on who's performing in a particular show. At the same time, it's professional because you got paid. It was a real
we got
gig.
paid. It was great.
You laugh like it wasn't a lot of money, but I'll tell you what, it was
a good amount of money.
5 times as much as I made my last rock and roll gig.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What you got paid alone was 5 times what they paid us the last time. I think that was at the Garden Bowl, downtown Detroit.
Unfortunately, I cannot quit my day job. Yeah, that was at the Garden Bowl.
It's not that much money.
Because we don't do so many shows.
Incidentally, the Garden Bowl gig was not in the bowling alley. There's a bar out in front of the bowling alley. Just in case anybody's wondering, were you playing rock and roll standing in a bowling alley lane? No. But
That would have been funny.
that would have been funny, actually. That would have been
Try
cool.
to knock down the amplifier.
If somebody doesn't like the song we play, they just send a ball down the lane, and it'd be like a skip button, on your record player or your CD player.
Oh, yes, Bonnie says the hit of last year's Ocon, where we got third place in the
that's
Ocon
true.
Got Talent.
Yeah, we tied with Mike Dart.
Dart,
It's got
Mike
two
Dart.
A's. I guess it's just Dart.
Yeah.
Or is it two R's?
Two
Anyway,
T's.
we tied with Mike Dart, who is an amazing belly dancer.
Oh my gosh,
And
he's
you're
a
like,
tribal fusion belly dancer.
What do you mean belly
So
dancer? He's a
good.
dude. No. You got to see
Oh
Mike
my
Dart. I don't know if
gosh.
he's put it out there, but there are clips of him doing tribal fusion
Oh,
belly
he's
dancing.
so good.
If you're the kind of person who says, well, guys shouldn't belly dance, watch those clips. He
You
is
will-
amazing. And yet, Amy was so good, she tied for third place.
Yes, so
You were
that
great.
was good.
Very
and
cool.
Robert was the instrumentation. He played guitar.
I did provide the music, yes.
Yes, so that was great.
So great fun. Yeah, so Amy is a dancer. And because Amy is a pro in that she gets paid, but she doesn't do this every night or every week, I'm all for anything we can do to encourage Amy to do more and more dancing. And that's what I want for you, each and every one of you out there. Whatever is your joy, your moment, your thing that makes you feel that life is worth living, I want more of that for you. Now, it's all over this crazy, weird crossover pop country hit, I Hope You Dance. I keep saying by Leanne Womack. Well, she was the singer, the performer, but it was actually written by, I don't know, the songwriter's handy. And it's kind of a big deal when you get into songs like this. It's not my style of music. It's immediately I'm thinking, oh, it's a little too sentimental, too much.
Yeah, a little schmaltzy.
I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. You get your fill to eat, but always keep that hunger. This is poetry. This is kind of amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's controversial stuff in there. What do we do with that line? I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. When I said before, one of my missions in life is to find the kernel of truth or the bit of value, the nugget of value, in well-loved woo. And you know what we mean by woo. It's a modern term for anything mystical or non-rational.
Self-help that is not quite integrated. Yeah.
And it was kind of hard. I had to be really charitable with this one. But let us know in the chat if you have a sense of, well, what does that mean? I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean.
Well, so let's go ahead and put your answers in the chats and we'll get back to that. But first, do you mind if I talk about dance or?
Yes, please.
What do you have?
Yeah, while people are formulating their answers in the chat to what does that phrase mean to you?
Okay, so so dancing is, the way that I would describe it in a very, very short way is honoring your body and a certain piece of music that you like by movement of your body. Now, that's a very, very general kind of thing. So that's what I think in terms of, for people who have never really mastered the skill of dance themselves, for instance, and there are some people who haven't. I say dance anyway. So if you're wherever you are, if you are, at a wedding or a party or a restaurant or whatever it is that other people are dancing, get up and dance, because it's not a contest. It's honoring yourself and the music that you like to hear by moving your body, and in that way, it gives you that, like as Robert was saying, that kind of what did Aristotle call it? Value experience. Ends value.
And there are means values, things
Yes.
you need to accomplish something, achieve something, get something.
So, or
and there
Sam,
are ends values.
or Sam Harris would call the flow state, or however, but where you're not necessarily self-conscious of what you're doing, but you're just kind of channeling movement according to what you're hearing. And and of course, that, as we were talking about, in terms of playing music, whether you're doing it by ear or doing it with sheet music, for instance, or any of these flow states kinds of things, you're honoring your values in that way, and you're giving yourself a life is an end in itself kind of experience. And so dance, dance, as they say, dance like no one is watching, because really no one really No one is there to judge you, or and if they are, then they shouldn't be there. They're the oddballs, not you.
That's right.
So dance is something I've done since I was 4 years old, and always loved it. And but I got to tell you, flamenco. If you don't know what flamenco is, and you're thinking I'm saying the bird flamingo, then you need to look this up. It's FLAMENCO, flamenco. It's a Spanish dance, southern Spain. There's a whole history behind it. It's extremely complicated. It's hard to do because you're dealing with, as you saw, castanets, fans, shawls. Men do it, and look up. I think it was Jose Greco from the 1940s.
Super hot.
Super amazing stuff, and it's kind of like tap dancing, but it really isn't. It's sort of like beating your feet into the ground in an intensely passionate way, and lifting your arms up like you're about to pounce and strike, but you're not going to. You're going to spin, and you're going to celebrate life in the most passionate and intense way you could ever imagine. And that's I think there's a Spanish word called what is it, like duende or something like that. Anyway, it's passion, it's intensity. So I did this show yesterday, and it was like a 40-minute long show. There's a lot of different things that we did. We did 3 different tangos. We did 4 sevillanas with castanets and 2 sevillanas with fans. We did bulerías, and then we did demonstrations, and then our instructor Michelle did the alegrías. So anyway, did all sorts of different forms of dance in flamenco. So I went ahead and I looked back because I started this Facebook page, and if you're interested in it, I'm going to go ahead and put the link in there. It's called Meeting for Art, and it's a group of mainly objectivist types getting together, and we are carving out a half an hour every Sunday and Tuesdays, and we're talking about art and what it means to us and what kind of art that we're doing, whether it's more crafty art like jewelry making or woodworking, to dance, to actual, visual arts, drawing and painting. So we are talking about how, as people, as human beings, as conceptual human beings, volitional conceptual human beings, so awesome, we can actually make choices and put, a little bit of our metaphysical value judgments or our sense of life or a little piece of our souls into what we're doing artistically and the choices that we make. And it's fantastic. It's just a wonderful little get together. So I'll put that link in the chat. So anyway, we're talking about, it's not so much how good you are at something, whether that's flamenco dancing or drawing or whatever. It's about enjoying the process, loving the doing, as a Howard Rourke would say. Love the doing, and introspect while you are going through that process of being creative, whatever it is you're doing. Even if you don't think what you're doing, whether it's dancing, you're not great at dancing or whatever, just introspect what you're doing and how enjoyable the process is. So that's what we really focus on. So I went back to dance. I went to the Ayn Rand lexicon, right? And if anybody has, if you haven't read The Romantic Manifesto yet by Ayn Rand, you need to, because that is my favorite piece of nonfiction writing. It's just amazing. And every time I look up the article on dance here in the lexicon, it just makes my jaw drop, blows my mind every single time. And I'm not going to read it all aloud here, but I guess I'll read this part. So with regard to dance, it's kind of like an add-on to music. You have to have or you should probably have music while you're dancing. But she says every strong emotion has a kinesthetic element, experienced as an impulse to leap or cringe or stamp one's foot, etc. Just as a man's sense of life is part of all his emotions, so it is part of all his movements and determines his manner of using his body, his posture, his gestures, his way of walking, etc. We can observe a different sense of life in a man who characteristically stands straight, walks fast, gestures decisively, and in a man who characteristically slumps, shuffles heavily, gestures limply. This particular element, the overall manner of moving, constitutes the material, the special province of the dance. The dance stylizes it into a system of motion expressing a metaphysical view of man. Okay, you guys can read the rest of it later. But, yeah, Ayn Rand was not a dancer. She danced around, I think, with a baton, dancing to her tiddlywink music. But she was not a professional dancer. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how much she knew of dance, but my gosh, I mean, so insightful. It takes my breath away. So, yeah, if anybody has any things that they want to share with regard to dance, you are very much welcome to.
Well, I do have a couple of comments that folks have made about the question about the song.
Oh, the song, of the dance?
I Hope You Dance. Remember that
yes.
controversial line that I mentioned?
Yes. Good.
And, you know, that people are rightly concerned or suspicious or critical of.
Mm-hmm.
But Kuda Baba, probably the real name? No, maybe a screen name. Anyway, Kuda Baba in the chat says, perhaps it pertains... Well, let me read Bonnie's comment first. Bonnie says, well, I love the ocean. I appreciate how huge it is, but I don't feel small at all.
Mm-hmm.
Big smiley face. Very good. But Kuda Baba says, and I think this gets closer to where we would go with this. Again, we're looking for the kernel of truth in well-loved Wu. Perhaps it pertains to the line about keeping your sense of wonder. See, that's the opening line in the song, which I quoted earlier. I hope you never lose your sense of wonder. And what we mean by wonder is not necessarily the fearful kind of awe, but the awe of possibilities and admiration and yearning and ambition. So, yeah, the first time I heard, I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean, my initial impression was, why would you feel small? You know, I think about, you know, right away we go to, you should feel proud of your ability to grasp it and conquer it and, you know, take it, control of it. You know, Ayn Rand said, the virtue of pride can best be described by the term moral ambitiousness. It means that one must earn the right to hold oneself as one's highest value by achieving one's own moral perfection, which one achieves by never accepting the code of irrational virtues, impossible to practice, and by never failing to practice the virtues one knows to be rational, never accepting an unearned guilt, nor ever earning any, or if one has earned it, never leaving it uncorrected. So, yes, pride is a virtue, humility is not. In fact, she mentions humility. She says, there is no more despicable coward than the man who deserted the battle for his joy, fearing to assert his right to existence, lacking the courage and the loyalty to life of a bird or a flower reaching for the sun. Discard the protective rags of the vice you call a virtue, humility. Learn to value yourself, which means to fight for your happiness. I agree with all of that 110%. But I also think of the Fountainhead. You know, Dominique Francon has finally figured out that the world isn't run by the ne'er-do-wells. Here, I'll read a bit from the Fountainhead. Dominique lay stretched out on the shore of the lake. You know, imagine looking at the ocean. She looked at the house on the hill, at the tree branches above her, flat on her back, hands crossed under her head. She studied the motion of leaves against the sky. It was an earnest occupation, giving her full contentment. Remember, unquote, we're talking about ends values here. We're talking about the flow state that Sam Harris seems to think is the exception to the rule. We're talking about that perspective on your life as an end in itself. Going on with this scene. She thought, it's a lovely kind of green. There's a difference between the color of plants and the color of objects. This has a light in it. This is not just green, but also the living force of the tree made visible. I don't have to look down. I can see the branches, the trunk, the roots, just by looking at that color. That fire around the edges is the sun. I don't have to see it. I can tell what the whole countryside looks like today. The spots of light weaving in circles, well, that's the lake. The special kind of light that comes refracted from water. The lake is beautiful today, and it's better not to see it, just to guess by these spots. I have never been able to enjoy it before, the sight of the earth. It's such a great background, but it has no meaning except as background. And I thought of those who owned it, and then it hurt me too much. I can love it now. They don't own it. They own nothing. They've never won. I have seen the life of Gail Wynant, and now I know. One cannot hate the earth in their name. The earth is beautiful. And it is a background, but not theirs.
Beautiful.
So if you can think of the earth as that, as the background for this life of yours, this life that is an end in itself,
yes,
then when you feel small, you don't feel like morally small, you don't feel small in stature. You simply feel that there's so much opportunity, there's so much out there.
Yeah.
There is so much just waiting for you.
Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, it's more of like a childlike perspective, that sense of life where you know the Cheryl Brooks sense of life, for instance, yes, where you can't wait to see what's around the next corner. You're so excited about the possibilities of life.
Yes.
And so yes, when I heard that, my reaction was, when you feel small, when you look out on the ocean, I thought, well, the best, most generous interpretation of that would be that it's childlike. It's, don't lose your sense of wonder. Don't lose your sense that, it's Ayn Rand's, that yours is an upright posture to go into the world, to find possibilities, to make them real. It's empowering. It's empowering instead of it being that kind of toxic humility people talk about, which is not empowering, which is just life-destroying. Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying the songwriters meant that the way we're talking about it, mm-hmm, but in a certain sense, I don't care, because when I listen to a song, and not just this song, but any song, and I find a conception in it that is prickly, that seems to be an attack on my values, I can remember, well, this is an artwork, this is a song. This means exactly what I choose it to mean. And if I ever have a conversation with the songwriters on this song, I may level my criticisms, let them know what I think.
Yeah.
If they said something really bad, I would want to not give them my sanction. I understand all of that. But yes, I absolutely, standing before the ocean, feel an enormous sense of wonder and possibility. And I'm glad that it is larger than me, because I don't want to ever run out of values in the world. I want them to be there to be far more out there than I can enjoy, because I can enjoy an awful lot.
That's definitely flipping that perspective on its head.
Which is exactly what I want for you.
Yeah, but that Dominique Francon description was really lovely.
Well, because what I want to end with is just to reinforce one of the takeaways from the discussion of Sam Harris, and of dancing, and of song lyrics like this, and of ends values, and of anything that puts you in that state. And that is that your life is an end in itself. Reread chapter 11 of Anthem if you have any doubts ever that your life requires no sanction. Your life is the sanction. So thank you for joining us for 5 minutes with Robert Nasir and Amy Nasir. We are glad you were here. We are glad you came. My homework for the week is to continue with the homework from last week. Morning routine, up every morning before 6 a.m. and following those steps, bike ride every single day. Now, this is the kind of homework that doesn't necessarily apply to you out there, but if you want to join me for any part of this journey, if you follow me on Twitter, you see I am actually posting a snapshot of the clock Monday through Fridays, so you know that I am actually getting up before 6 o'clock in the morning and posting other quirky things, a bit of morning wisdom, all of that there too, twitter.com/Robert Nasir. My Post-it note for the week, you can already guess my Post-it note for the week says dance. This is not literal. For you it may be sing, or for you it might be run. Feel the endorphins, feel the moment, do the running thing, find out what you're capable of. Or for you it might be, well, the other one says DMSR. Now the Prince fans out there already know what DMSR stands for. But if you don't know, get a copy of 1999, because that is dance, music, sex, romance. The only thing I would say is sex and romance are the same thing. I don't care if you're talking about a one-night stand or commitment for the rest of your life. Sex is romance. But yes, find those moments, find those ends in themselves moments. Put a Post-it note on your wall if it reminds you, I'm a dude, I can't skip down the street. That would be stupid. That would be like wearing a pink shirt. It's weird. If you ever try skipping, it feels like watching a horse trot. Mm-hmm. It will change your state in a heartbeat. If anybody's around, it will embarrass you. And then you will punch through that embarrassment. But even if nobody's around, man, it's a weird thing if you try. I don't know, maybe girls feel the same way, but especially if you're a dude, if you're a guy, I think there are differences between men and women, even though it runs the gamut.
You should do it anyway.
That's right. And you should be proud of it. And this is the month to be proud of things.
Yeah, as John says on YouTube, frolic.
Frolic. Get out there and frolic. Let the shenanigans begin. Absolutely. Your life is an end in itself. Thank you for joining us. As always, show notes, links to all the things we talked about will be posted right after the show, almost immediately after the show. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, if you see direction you want this show to go, you let us know. 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir Facebook group. Link to that group is at robertnasir.com. Easy as pie. In fact, if you want to support the show, if you want to contribute financially, and thank you to those of you who already do, you are in our hearts, in our souls, in our minds, in all those separate things that Sam Harris thinks somehow we can't integrate. You are there in each and every one of those places. If you want to be one of those patrons, one of those supporters, if you go to robertnasir.com, you'll see a link to our Patreon, where you can be a monthly contributor, or our PayPal link, where you can make a one-time contribution. Both are enormously appreciated. And with that said, we wish you every success. We wish you flourishing. We wish you that joy in that moment that makes you say, this is a moment worth living. And as always, we wish you love.